Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Kosovo's parliament has convened 3 times in less than 24 hours in a last-ditch effort to elect a new president before a fast-approaching deadline. But now each session has been derailed by a lack of quorum. And failure to choose a president would automatically trigger new elections within 45 days, sending Kosovars back to the polls for the second time in just months after the December 28 vote. Now, to break all this down, I'm joined by Frauke Seebass, Associate Fellow at the German Council on Foreign Relations. Thank you so much for being with us here on World Talks here on TVP World. Frauke, so let me ask you this. Do you think there's still a real chance that Kosovo's parliament elects a president at the last minute today, or has that window, you think, effectively closed?
Thank you very much, and great to be here. A very short answer, it's possible, but it's not very likely. As you said, the deadline expires at midnight, but what we've seen today and also the past days, I don't think it's very likely.
And let me ask you, why do you think that the parliament has actually been unable to deliver this far? I mean, walk me through the political deadlock a little bit.
Yes. So I'd say there are a lot of reasons that can be put forward, but I think at the core of all of them is a very deep mistrust between the governing Vetëvendosje party of the Prime Minister or acting Prime Minister Albin Kurti and the various opposition parties. As you remember, Vetëvendosje won more than 50% of votes during the snap elections in last December. And so the party has a comfortable majority of 63 out of 120 seats in the parliament. So they could govern by themselves if it weren't for the presidential elections, because for the president's elections, we need a 2/3 majority, so 80 votes in the first 2 rounds. So if the first 2 rounds do not work, we have a 3rd round for which a simple majority is enough. So this actually, Vetëvendosje would have. But here comes the crux. It's getting even more complicated. For the vote to be valid during any round, we need to have at least 80 MPs present during the voting procedure. But what we've seen so far is that the opposition has boycotted the previous voting rounds. As you said, we didn't have the quorum ever. And the reason they are stating is that they really don't trust that Vetëvendosje will compromise on their candidates so that, they will have a comfortable majority in parliament and they will have a president in the end. So, they will control the entire Kosovo, the entire institutions. So the only thing that they feel they can do to prevent the vote from or to prevent this from happening is to not come to the vote at all, to boycott the vote so that it cannot go forward, let's say. On the other hand, last sentence, Prime Minister Kurti said that during various talks that he had with the opposition leaders, especially with the LDK leader, he offered several concessions, including given ministerial posts to that party in his next government, but all of these were refused. So we've seen, especially at this very moment, a very loud blame game being played in Pristina.
Okay, so let's say, take the example, if no president is elected, right? If those snap elections are triggered, what happens next?
Yeah, so as you said, according to the Constitution, if we fail to elect a president within 30 days, we have automatically new snap elections and then these have to be held within 45 days. But we have a little bit of a special situation here, because if you remember, the parliament was actually already dissolved over this in March. The then President Vjosa Osmani actually resolved the parliament because they had not managed to elect a president or her successor before her time was up, which is another constitutional provision. But then the Constitutional Court actually came and said, we will overrule this. We will actually give the parliament the 30 days that they normally have to elect a president. But these 30 days, as you know, are ending tonight. So we might see another appeal of the ruling party to the Constitutional Court to extend the deadline. Actually, a Kosovar colleague of mine suggested that they might also use this to kind of push back the election date a little bit so that we will have the summer when a large part of the Kosovo diaspora is in the country. The diaspora often votes for the Vetëvendosje party, and they also feature this a lot in their win in December, in their landslide win in December, which was during Christmas holidays, so also a lot of diaspora there. But to be honest, this is actually not undisputed, also given that actually diaspora can also vote in the consulates or also via mail.
If I turn to Slovenia for a moment, what do you think, how serious is the prospect of possibly having snap elections there?
It's not really clear at this moment, but it looks like parties are increasingly preparing for this possibility. So we see the rhetoric already shifting in this direction. As you know, the elections did not result in a clear majority. We don't have a stable coalition that could be formed by either side of the two biggest winners, let's say. So there is still a slight chance we'll have a minority government, but that's very unlikely, and it's also very unlikely to be very stable. And I think we also see here a trend across Europe with increasing fragmentation of voters, polarization among voters, which also kind of reduces the room for compromise between the parties, especially with populist parties on the rise. So scenarios like we've seen in Bulgaria, 8 elections in 5 years might become more common also in other parts of Europe.
And possible fresh political turmoil in Romania, what do you think?
Well, for now, what we've seen, the things that we know is that there will be, a vote of non-confidence is planned for next week, which will be initiated by the Social Democrats together with the far-right opposition. The two of them together do not have enough seats to topple the prime minister by themselves, but it is expected that other MPs would join in. And then what we would see, of course, would be new debates between the parties. The Social Democrats have been under heavy fire for, working together with the far right, and they said today that they will not go into a coalition with them. But some observers are not really sure about this, and I think that it will probably depend a lot on the public support. So whether they think they can benefit from new elections or not, and if they don't think so, they might, return to the idea of maybe cooperating with the far right. In any case, normally the the president has 2 more times to put forward candidates for prime minister, and if neither of them, if the government is toppled, obviously, and if neither of them receives a majority, he can dissolve the parliament and call new elections. So this is what we know so far. The rest for now is speculation, but not unlikely that we will also see new elections here.
Let me just ask you very briefly before I let you go. I asked you about, Kosovo, Slovenia, Romania together. Do you think that the situation here is actually like an isolated political crisis in a way, quote unquote, or do you see it more of a broader pattern of possible instability in the region?
As I said, we see patterns here, but I do not think this is necessarily only affecting the region. There are probably some regional specifics and also country specifics. But generally, we see across Europe really this polarization of voters, or the rise of populists, which also reduces the room for compromise also of the democratic parties and their room to maneuver. So it really reduces the space to form stable coalition and actually move the country forward, which of course again in turn brings more frustration, which again it can be used by populists. So I think this is something that we will see across Europe more and more, and certainly in those countries.
Thank you so much, Frauke Seebass, Associate Fellow at the German Council on Foreign Relations, for being our guest here on World Talks today.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for tuning in here to this episode of World Talks. I'm Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.